he's as big as boxing, he's as influential.
Who's been behind some of the biggest fights this century.
One of the most notorious sports promoters in the world.
The one and only
Eddie Hearn, welcome to the On Mission podcast.
You live by the sword, you die by the sword. For me, success just used to be how much money you had. No one can tell you what success is, just what success is for you. I see it in AJ, a guy that is making a sacrifice, is working harder than ever. And it's a big fight coming up. You know, it's a must-win fight.
If the result goes your way on the 1st of April, Tyson Fury, AJ, will it ever happen?
AJ wants that fight. We would make that fight now. People stop me in the street and say, I love Tyson Fury. You know, he gave all his money away to charity. I'm like, no, he didn't. What are you talking about?
If you could fight with any boxer, who would it be?
Blimey, one that wasn't very good. Jake Paul, maybe something like that, I don't know.
Eddie Hearn, welcome to the On Mission podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for inviting us into your lovely office. It's really nice. We were meant to be doing, when we came to record with your dad, we were originally meant to be recording it in this office.
Right.
I think you demoted him, didn't you? We went to the offices across the road.
This is where I'd spend most of my life growing up, really.
Yeah.
We moved here at 4, well, I was 4. And this was the living room. And this was my dad's office for a long time. Yeah. When I took over as chairman a couple of years ago, I kicked him into another office in there, which is fine to do. He's supposed to be retired. Yeah. But like every time I look up, he's peering through that door. So
your dad is world class at a lot of things, but retirement is certainly not one of them.
I think for health reasons, it's good not to retire. Because I just think he would literally just sort of dwindle away if he just sat at home fishing. So he's got a very active mind and a smart mind. And, you know, for me, running the business, I want him involved. Yeah. Because he's an asset. So
you didn't exactly have a conventional childhood, did you?
Not really, no. I mean, my dad was from Dagenham. Lived in a council estate. Dad was a bus driver. Yeah. Started to make money really around the time that I was born, really. So, and I think because he came from that background, liked to spend it, liked to be a little bit flash with it as well. And this was kind of his first big purchase into the world of being successful, if you like. So, I had a very privileged upbringing, really, although at the same time, had a working class dad that wanted to instill that in me, hated spoiled kids. So, you know, like any parent wants to give your child the best, but at the same time, always drummed into me about working for it. And sport was the foundation for being competitive. And that's what we always did, you know, whether it was playing out there, cricket, football, table tennis, he would always make sure that he won. And he would never let me win, only when I deserved to win. Yeah. And that was kind of how I've been brought up. Winning is everything.
Winning is everything.
Taking part is, important, but not really.
No participation trophies.
No, and that's just, it's not for everybody. And, you know, even with my kids, I find it difficult not to be that parent, you know, like my dad was, because I have two daughters, so I want them to be competitive. I want them to understand the importance of winning. Yeah. But I'm probably a little bit softer on them than he was on me in that respect.
Then you would have been, yeah. And by your own admission, you were a little bit of a twat growing up. You were in the private education.
Yeah, it's hard not to be. I mean, I went to a private school that was full of people, well, other than my friends, that weren't really like me. Yeah. You know, although I had a successful dad, I was more like him than like the kids that went to the school. So I was Jack the lad, you know, I was the sort of leader of the gang, if you like. Wasn't really much of a gang at that school, but, and my world was going to boxing shows. My world was hanging around with Eubank and Naz and, you know, Frank Bruno. And so I had a bad attitude really amongst the teachers, because I kind of looked at the teacher as if to think, who are you? You know, last Saturday I was in New York with Nazim Hamid and, you know, and stuff like that. So I don't look back too fondly on my attitude as a child. But at the same time, no, it wasn't my fault, but, you know, my dad had 2 limousines that he would drive the boxers and snooks around. He used to pick me up from school in them, and like, looking back, awful, really. And I think anyone would have looked at me at school and thought, God, I don't like this kid, you know. And, but the best thing that happened to me, you know, I actually didn't get kicked out of that school, asked to leave and not come to the sixth form. And that was the best thing that happened to me, because I ended up going to a college in Romford, and it just changed. People are motivated differently. I used to probably object to that strict nature. I like to be encouraged, but at college it was more like, basically, if you don't turn up, it's up to you.
Yeah.
And no one, half the class would be downstairs missing lessons, and kind of think to yourself, what's the point? Actually, you might, and that changed me really. And I got my A levels there, and that was probably the best 2 years of my education. Funnily enough, that actually cost my parents nothing versus the private school fees that they probably felt like they wasted.
It's ironic, isn't it? But when we were chatting to your dad last time as well, he was telling us the concerns he had whilst you were growing up, and you always had this thing between you that when you got to age 18, you're going to go into the boxing ring together and have it out.
Yeah.
But you didn't quite make it to 18, did you?
16. Yeah, that's the same thing about, I think growing up for him, he probably knew kids whose parents had money. He didn't have money. And he probably really disliked those kids. And I think that was always a fear that he had, that I was going to be one of them. So he just said, look, when you get to 18, I need to just take you into the ring and beat you up, basically, and just show you about, obviously we come from different backgrounds, and but I was tall and I was boxing myself. So at 16, he called it forward. And I gave him a good pasting, and it was funny because it was probably like his proudest moment.
Yeah.
And it was in the paper the next day. Like, he spoke to all the media about something else, and he couldn't stop telling them, I was great. He hit me to the body and I couldn't get up and I was nearly sick. And that was like his stamp of approval for me. These things, every parent's different. And I'll tell a lot of these stories, and people sort of look at me and go, that's weird. But that was just his way, and that's how I was built. Again, comes back to sport. Winning, like business for us. We're both failed athletes, really. Like, if we had the choice, we'd rather be playing, right? Because we played everything. I was a decent cricketer. He was a good cricketer as well, but football, all right, rugby, okay, boxing, okay, but this is the next best thing. But everything that we learned and built was built through sport. And that's why I'm quite passionate now about sport in a community and with kids, because having a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old, I'm really worried about not just them, but the next generation of kids coming through in the social media and mobile world, away from what sport can teach you.
Yeah.
Nothing makes me feel better than watching my kids participate in sport, whether it's at a local boxing club, whether it's at football training, playing hockey, whatever it is. And it just, off their phones, competing, getting exercise, shaking hands after, like, it's a great feeling. And that's how I was brought up, just on sport, really.
And I know your dad calls you the silver spoon kid, and your biggest regret is the fact that you could never say that you're fully self-made.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely thing to be able to feel, and it's all right. Look, you have to play the hand you're dealt. I got dealt a great hand. The challenges that I had are very different to the challenges that someone who came from nothing had. For me, in my position, the challenge is to be successful in your own right when you have a successful father is really difficult. But at the same time, I had a leg up, and some people don't have the leg up. And sometimes I look at my dad, like when you look around here, this is where I grew up. So it takes you a while to become thankful because this is natural to you. Whereas my dad would have moved in here and gone, I can't believe it. And sometimes I'll go for walks with him around his new house and 300 acres or whatever it is. And he's just like, and that's a lovely feeling. I respect it. I'm thankful for it, but I've always kind of had it.
You have the same appreciation.
No, and I look at him in an envious way. I say, wow, that must be a great feeling to know you came from that council flat in Dagenham and now you've built all this. So I can never, people say that I've surpassed him in terms of our sort of achievements in boxing particularly, but in the business. But, I won't tell him. But what he did was, and I don't know if I could have done it. I would like the opportunity to do it because it would have been a great feeling. But as I said, you play the cards you're dealt and that's what we did.
It must have been quite challenging, though, from an identity point of view, when everyone refers to you as Barry Hearn's son.
Yeah. I liked it at 14, 15, 16, and I would be the first one to tell them, you know, oh, do you know Barry Hearn? That's my dad.
To get into the nightclubs
exactly.
and stuff.
Nightclubs, with the fighters, you know, to get backstage everywhere. And I went to the same school as Frank Lampard. He was in the year above me. And everyone knew him as Frank's boy, because Frank Lampard, his dad, who actually people don't even realise anymore, was a player at West Ham. And I used to see him every night, mostly with his dad, just practicing on his own in the school fields. Mm-hmm. And when he went to West Ham at 17, 18, everyone said, well, he's just got in because of his dad. It's ridiculous. Harry Redknapp, his uncle's in charge, you know, and he worked so hard that he became one of the greatest players England's ever produced. And no one even remembers Frank Lampard Sr., with all due respect. You know, I mean, he was a great player himself. So the fighters now, Conor Benn, Chris Eubank, Campbell Hatton, when your dad's a legend of the industry, it's very difficult, really. And it only really dawns on you probably in my early 20s, where it was like, if you don't do something special, you're always going to be Barry Hearn's son. And that would
It's a powerful motivator, though, isn't it?
That actually really frightens me now, thinking back to be at this position in my life and still be known as Barry Hearn's son. Like people, I'm proud to be, and I don't mind people saying it, but we joke with my dad that people go up to him and go, oh, you're Eddie Hearn's dad. You know, and that's kind of like,
memes.
Yeah, that's kind of like a stamp of approval. So yeah, I would have felt really, so first time I really thought about it, really, I think I would have felt really inadequate, really, if I would, at this stage in my life, have just been Barry Hearn's son still.
Is that why you felt the need to go forge your own path rather than go straight into the family business? Yeah,
I think originally when I left college, I never wanted to work for my dad or for Matchroom. It was like, I want to do it on my own, because everyone just said, why are you even, you don't worry about A-levels, you know, you're going to just go and work for your dad. It was like, and I wanted to prove that I could do something myself. But as I started working in the industry, I kind of felt like, why are you putting all this energy into this company when your dad has built this, you know, business, and it's kind of like your obligation to go and do it. You know, it's not like whether you want to or not, you should as his son. If you're working in sports particularly. But I wanted to get the ground in, and I wanted to prove that I could do it myself, or not at that level, but certainly go out but even when I went for the job interviews, you know, I was working for a company that was much smaller than Matchroom. And I sat down and the guy's going through my CV and he's like, can I ask you, are you related to Barry Hearn? And I'm like, it's my dad. And he's like, what are you doing here? And I say, you know, I don't want to go and work for him, etc. So, and at the time, we weren't a small company, but they were based in Romford, you know, and I wanted to go and work in London. I wanted to go, all my friends were in the city, and I wanted to be up there. So, yeah, I think
you've always created opportunities out of nothing, though, haven't you? Because after your Wethersfield days, you're in a job, and you just ended up randomly taking a phone call, and you're asking for the head of sales, and you're like, oh, that's myself, and you just put yourself in the path of these opportunities constantly.
Yeah, I guess I'm a hustler in that respect of money. I loved money growing up because that's how I was educated, right? My dad would make me count his coins. He would have like a box that, you know, when he emptied his pockets at night, all the coins would go in there. And I would count it up, the pound coins and the 50p pieces. And I would say to him, you got 42 pounds in here, you know. And then he would make me clean his shoes, and I would get £1 a pair, and I would do 8 of them. And again, like, that's just, I mean, he's money mad. Like, even now when we're talking about the shows, you know, and it's never about the value of the show or it's just the budget. That's the competition. So if a show is destined to make £1,000 or £200,000 or £1 million, it's to make sure that you deliver. And if it's under, why? And that's, but money to him, like, was was everything. And that's how I was brought up. So as a kid, the thought of making money, like going to Weatherseal Windows at 16 and making, I don't know, £100 a week or whatever it was, that was unbelievable for me. I was like, wow, like I can do this. And then I went to work for a business, got sort of headhunted really, and then moved to LEA events. And I kind of realised I'm still my own biggest critic. Like sometimes I trust my ability, but I like to sort of self-consciously keep myself humble.
Okay,
So it
how do
makes
you
me
do
work
that?
harder. I'm my own biggest critic. I'm never really happy with the performance, or could be the show or whatever it is, because I feel like complacency is the biggest weakness in any business. And I just, sometimes I play that trick on myself, but I am also very critical of what I do. So, when I was sitting in those interviews to be, I think like 30 odd people went for that job, I was 19 and they were like mid to late 30s, 40s. They've been working in the industry for 10 or 15 years. I'd done a year and a half. And I was like, I'm not really going to get it, am I? And then that was probably the moment where I thought, wow. And they come to me and said, look, we've got this package. I think it was like £42,000. And I was on 12, all right? And they were like, we want to give you the job, but I just feel that at 19, so would 33,000 be okay? And I was like, I don't know, got to think about that. And I went away, I was like, wow, and it was just...
Try not to skip.
Yeah, I know, I was. And sort of walked in and out the door and said, yeah, I'll accept it, But yeah, it's... I've always, even when I was a kid, I would sell the programs at my dad's shows at York Hall. And it was just a feeling of a sale. So all these people and very interesting characters. I was 13, 14, programs, pound, and just taking the pounds, putting them in my pocket and at the end of the night, putting it all up and saying, this is what we sold. I was on 10%, and that's the kind of like the way I was brought up.
Did you ever celebrate your achievements?
No, not really. Not really. I've been trying, as the years have evolved, to enjoy the moment more. Not really celebrate the achievement, but enjoy the moment more. My dad, very different to me in that respect. Like if he had a good show, or if someone won a big fight, he would go. I've seen pictures of him in after the snooker world championships, tie everywhere, champagne up, and like. I don't know why I don't do that really. I go back to my room, in the hotel, and I'll read and watch social media and the clips from the night, and it's a big down. When you do a big show and all week for 8 weeks you've been building it up, you've been selling it, you've been doing interviews, and you do the show, hopefully you celebrate a great show and a great win. That for me is then when you have the big down, back to the room, quiet, sort of. Was that it? Because you kind of built that moment up. And the problem is, one of the problems with sort of chasing success and what is success is you're never really happy, and that's the danger. And everyone I spoke to, when I do my podcast, it's kind of said the same thing, whether it was Frank Lampard when he said, I won the Champions League and I lifted the trophy, and I was like, can't believe I won the Champions League. And it was like, right, that's done. We've got the Premier League next week, now I've got England. And Mo Farah said when he won Olympic gold, it was like, yeah. And then like the next few days, it was like, right, how do I break that time? And you've got to be careful of doing that, because one day you look back and say, I never really enjoyed it, did I? I never really celebrated those moments. But at the same time, I think if you're chasing greatness in whatever you do, that's just what people are like. I see that similarity. Everybody I speak to in those fields says the same thing. You never see them go out, the great ones, go out and go 2 weeks celebrating and, because they're thinking all the time. They're thinking about their competition. They're thinking about how they can improve their performance, and they're thinking about the next challenge. Mm-hmm. And that's the same for me. As soon as a fight's over, I'm thinking about next Saturday, where that is, or that fighter could be AJ. I remember when AJ beat Klitschko at Wembley, one of the greatest nights ever in boxing. went back to the hotel, and but I'm sort of having a couple of beers, but I'm thinking, I'm not talking to people, but I'm not really engaging in the conversation. I'm thinking, this governing body's going to put a mandatory on us tomorrow. That promoter might try and do that, and what we're going to do next for AJ, and it's just spinning dozens of plates.
So you actually go through the same process, win, lose or draw? Yeah,
pretty much. It's similar emotions. I mean, obviously, I live in, social media is
toxic.
Yeah, Twitter's so bad, but it is still, 95% of the comments that I'll get are negative. It's just the world. But you want nice comments. I like to say, I'm not bothered, I've got skin like a rhinoceros. And to be fair, I can really take stick. But there's nothing like positive comments. I mean, when someone messages me and says, I love what you're doing for boxing, that was a great show. I had a great night tonight. Thank you. That's a great feeling. When someone leaves the arena and says, wow, I paid my hard-earned money, I had a great night of entertainment. Oh, great. That's a great feeling. So, but win, lose or draw, the feeling's quite similar. The trip back home on a Sunday, it consumes you. It really does, and then I'm trying, as I get a little bit older, just to let it consume me less. But very difficult. It's
a bit of a paradox, isn't it? Because it was your relationships with the fans and your social media following that's been a huge contributor towards the success that you've had. But when you live in that space constantly, I mean, what's the ratio of positive to negative comments that you get?
Probably 95% negative. I mean, it depends what platform. If it's Twitter, Instagram different, but you can't really, it's a crazy world that you live in, that someone who you don't know, who could never achieve or operate at the level of, or have, the workload that you do, you are able to say something to you that could actually influence your mood or your day or your decisions. So when you break it down like that, you can't let this infiltrate you. But when you're passionate about something, and when you care what the fans think, you do. I do. I'm guilty of that a lot. And sometimes I won't take a break from social media, but I've turned my comments off now. But I'll still look every now and again because I need that feedback.
Yeah.
I need to know what the market and the fans are actually thinking. But those same people that might say something online when they see you at a show, ask for a photo, and it's a toxic world. And I sort of try and teach my kids as well that, it's not real. So, but I think it would be a better life to just turn it off. Yeah. Because actually, the only way those comments can infiltrate you is if you see them or if you read them. And if you don't read social media, you don't see them. I mean, I don't walk out and go for a coffee and some bloke's going, you arsehole Hearn, so in fact, they'll go, Eddie, and it's actually a better energy. But if you sit there going, oh God, how can you not be in a bad mood? Yeah. So really, you are what you consume. Yeah. And that's also what I tell my kids, and especially now with algorithms. You only have to, I was talking to my daughter about something the other day, and she was talking about someone at the school who's got depression, talking about self-harm. Next thing, you're on her TikTok, and it's all kids on TikTok talking about depression and self-harm. And it's like, it's just in the same way that if you're talking about a trip to Greece, next thing, it's all coming up on and it's an infiltration to make you think in a specific way. That's what's happening now across social media.
Yeah.
So whether they want you to go to a specific holiday destination, or whether you're talking about a topic that now all of a sudden you've got to be very careful, because that will start to affect your decisions, and it will start to dominate your life and perhaps take you off track.
Yeah, it's something I'm really precious about now. I used to be terrible for it, but the first hour of the day, it's 100% no phones, no social media, no emails.
I've read that. I'm not mastered that yet. I mean, I'm trying. As I've got older, I've taken much more care of my health. I train every day. It's about the ice bath, so I do all that, and sleep is a big problem for me. I try, but phone is my biggest problem. because it's a natural thing for me to wake up in the night and go, oh, we're working in different markets
different
as well.
Time zones.
So we're UK, Australia, America, Mexico, and I'll wake up in the night and think, oh, I wonder if that's come through. Boom. Next thing I'm checking, I've got a dozen WhatsApps going through them. Next thing I think, I'll just see if anything's happened on social media. And next thing it's 45 minutes where I'm up, and last night I did it at 1:45. I went to bed at 11. And then, I end up getting my time, but it's the quality of sleep. And for me, that's just about being the best I can. And it's about workload, having the engine to do what I do. That's the key, because people have always said to me from when I started work, I used to represent golfers on the PGA Tour, European Tour. I would fly in from somewhere in America. I would come back or meet my mates. This is at 21, 22. We were out all the time. I would go out till 4 o'clock in the morning. Then at 7 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock, I would drive to Birmingham, to the Belfry, to another golf tournament. And they would just say to me, how do you do that? And now everybody says the same thing. It's probably the common thing is, you're everywhere. How do you do that? And the answer is one is a passion for what I do and a will to win. But also now it's more about looking after myself so I can actually do that, because it will kill me. I mean, that's ultimately we've got a history of heart problems in the family, and, my dad was a smoker and his dad was, and I'm not. And, we always make sure that we get regular checks, but ultimately it will kill you if you don't look after yourself, and you'll regret it. So for me now, that's a big part of what I do, is actually staying healthy.
Well, no, you've lost quite a lot of weight over the years as well. And you can see the difference. There's no point in being the richest man in the graveyard.
Yeah.
Is your definition of success changed as your financial wealth has grown, and that's probably
very
become
much
less
so,
of a
very
focus?
much. I mean, for me, success just used to be how much money you had, in all honesty. Like, how big was your house? What car did you drive? And I've got more qualities from not more, but I've got the right qualities from my mum. So I'm a bit different to my dad, where I'm competitive. I love a pound note, but he is money. And he, if you asked him what success is, he'd tell you exactly that. Loads of land, right? Whereas now, as I've got a little bit older, success is actually an individual perception. So there isn't, you cannot, no one can tell you what success is for other people. It's just what success is for you. And actually, as I've got older and started to understand the world, success is actually, like, my greatest success is just feeling great. Especially like I'm saying with this lifestyle this morning I did, 5 miles on a road, 40 minutes, had an infrared sauna, had an ice bath, and I feel unbelievable. That's success for me now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I would never have said that, maybe even 5 years ago. But if I said that to my dad, he would go, "Shut up." What? That's just, I've said before to my dad, like the Conor Ben situation, stuff that gets you down. God, it's hard. It's like, shut up. It's hard. What you do is you look yourself in the mirror and you say, as far as my dad's concerned, the way to solve mental health is look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm great. I feel great. And I said, it doesn't work like that, So, but that's definitely success. Success. I used to think that if you lived in, a small house, and didn't have, and you had a 9 to 5 with no ambitions or no future within the job, how on earth could you be successful? But now I understand that person may have a great life. They're spending time with their family, they've got a spring in their. It's only a mindset, really, success. Because if your mind is strong and you're in a good place, that for me is successful, really. And doing things that make you feel good. I do think success comes from achievement, but achievement can be so many different things. Like, too many people worry and just look at medium and long-term goals. They never really focus on the short-term goals. And I feel like if mentally you're a little bit off track, that's what I do, is I just look at the now, today, and I will write down, so, if I feel like a bit down or losing track, I say, right, what do I need to do? So today, same thing, run, ice bath, do this podcast, go and get some nice food for tonight, have a meeting later on, must do that, have a massage, I don't know. And it's all these things, and I just tick them off. And then I look at it at the end of the day, I say, what a day. That's a great day. Yeah. Because too many people go, in 3 weeks, we've got that, and I don't know what's going to happen on that. And then, and if we don't do that in December, and that's why people fail, because they don't overcome the short-term obstacles. So, yeah, success is about fulfillment, but it's a feeling, I think. And I was very naive to that earlier in my life.
And also, I think as well, when you do these things, the ice baths and the infrared saunas and everything else, it does make you more focused and more productive. So it's, you're looking after your physical and your mental health as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I just think anything that's going to make you feel good.
Yeah.
I cannot...
Peace on red wine.
I cannot believe that there are people out there that don't exercise.
Yeah.
And some people who haven't exercised for 20 or 30 years.
But going back to your dad's point, and whilst I know that, times have changed and we need to have a lot more empathy for mental health, I think there's also a lot to be said for that mindset, looking at yourself in the mirror, making sure you're taking full ownership and accountability for your own life. Are you exercising? What are you consuming? Are you on social media all the time? Are you eating crap food? Are you, are you not moving your body? Are you doing all these other things?
Life's full of excuses. It's easy to make excuses. How many times... I woke up this morning at 6 and I thought, I've got to do this run. And I'm laying there thinking, I really don't want to do this run. And it's just the moment, it's the decision to go, what? And once you do that, you're off. But there's no excuses, really. There's loads of time. I say to my sister all the time, she's not really into her sport. She's got twin boys, and that is the absolute focus of her world outside of, she runs Matchroom Media. And I say to her, get out, get in the gym on the treadmill. Just do half an hour. Just do a walk. I haven't got time to do that. Of course you've got time. Well, they're up at 6. I said, then get up at 5:30. Oh, I'm not doing that. I'm so tired. I said, you're so tired because you're not doing anything. Yeah. You know what I mean? So excuses are easy. Yeah. There's loads of stuff that you don't want to do. But the difference, my dad is, you've spoken to him. I've never known anyone with energy like that. He wasn't always like that. When he worked in boxing, he was a completely different person. He was aggy, he was, he had a temper, he was angry at times. But now, over the last 15, 20 years, he's annoying, actually. But it's right, so he'll phone me every night. All right, son, how are we doing? What are we up? I'm sitting there going, what a day I've had. Yeah, don't worry about it. And pick me up in the morning if we play golf or whatever at 6:30. All right, yeah. And you're like, but he's one of a kind, and...
Why did your dad get so disillusioned with boxing, having such a high vibration?
It's like, we run a business full of honesty and integrity. We don't lie, we don't knock people for money, we don't cheat on people, and boxing is completely opposite. So you become so frustrated because we're all in people. So if we've got your back, we've got your back. And sometimes fighters will leave, and it's just, I think he just became, it can make you miserable. And it's made me miserable at times, really, the sport. And you just got to be careful, because sometimes I'll do an interview and someone will say, oh, he sounds a bit like Frank Warren there, or something like that. And Frank's a great promoter, he's in his 70s.
Why don't you trust him?
Frank Warren? He just operates in a different way to us. The business operates in a different way. Frank's a great promoter. And I've never met him, actually, which is so strange. No. But my dad always said, I deal with his sons now, George particularly, I get on really well with. My dad's always said to me, look, Frank, socially, great. You go out for a bit of dinner with him, you have a great time. But it's just, we have different ethics in business, I feel. But I've always watched him get so angry, in interviews and stuff like that, specifically when you mention my name. And sometimes I watch interviews now, I go, whoa, don't, because, it's just what, I don't blame Frank Warren. I blame the business because that's what it does to you. I saw it with my dad, like I said, completely different. And I think if he would have stayed in boxing, he would have been just like them now in the interviews. But why do you want to be in your 70s? Why do you want to, Bob Arum's 91.
Yeah.
And I watch him, Eddie, I'm thinking, mate, I don't want to be doing this when I'm 50, in all honesty, because there's better things in life to do with yourself than get angry or annoyed or frustrated, but we love to win. Right. So when you step away, he had to make a decision. He was like, I'm going to step away from boxing. I'm going to go into darts. Much nicer, much easier. People are much more grateful. It was the best thing he ever done for himself. Mm-hmm. But if he was still in boxing now, I think I'm not even sure he'd be alive, in all honesty. Yeah. I think he would have got him.
Well, you nearly jacked in, didn't you, after your first big event?
Yeah.
You were so close to just walking away from
I never wanted to be a
industry.
boxer, but boxing was a massive part of my life from when I was 8 years old. But I never, when I was going to the shows and carrying the belts out for the fighters, I never thought to myself, I want to be a boxing pro. I think I want to be a boxer, if anything. And it was just timing, really, what you're referring to, the Audley Harrison fight, where I just took him from down and out, really, in his career to the World Heavyweight Championship.
You truly believed in him as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, because he's a great... And he's an Olympic gold medalist. I mean, he's not a mug. But it's the same thing, what I talked about us. Once we're with you, And with Audley, I believed in him, and I was with him. And we got him there, and it obviously didn't work out. It was understatement of the year. But after that, I was like, that was great fun. I wasn't never thinking about building a stable, getting an exclusive Sky deal, dominating the sport globally. I was just thinking, glad that's over. Fuck it. That was amazing. And then everyone just started, wow, who's this kid? He's just done that. And
well, the event was actually a success. I mean, the fight wasn't the best. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I got a refund from Sky. Right, I rang up and said, I thought, I'm not paying for that. Yeah. I rang up Sky and said it's been glitchy all the way through.
Yes.
got my refund because he just didn't throw a punch, did he? What happened to him?
He just froze, really. I think some people have the mentality for it and some people don't. And I don't think he had the mentality for prize fighting. Boxing, you have to be a really specific type of individual. That's really, although you don't see well-off individuals trying to become people, kids from privileged backgrounds, they're not tough enough. Same with me. I'm in terms of privileged backgrounds, I'm probably the toughest out there, but nothing compared to these young fighters, where they've come from, the fire in their belly to get out of where they've come from. That's why you admire some people, and very few that have come from a privileged background that can do it. So you have to be a specific type of individual to get in there and fight. And Audley, as in the amateurs, had everything, but in the pros couldn't quite transcend it. But that was the moment that everybody, within a month, we'd sign Darren Barker, Kell Brook, Carl Froch. And I said, we're going to go for it. And, it went from there. But I never said, I never felt I'm going to be a boxing promoter. It was never an ambition.
David, he actually rang you up though, because he went for you in the press conference, but he rang you up afterwards. He was like, all right, Eddie, great show that you put on there, brilliant.
Yeah, that was for the Bellew fight, but the Audley Harrison fight, I'd gone at him the whole build-up. He's a fake champion, he doesn't have a chin, he's this. And then after the fight, I walked down the corridor and I saw him coming out of his change room and I was like, oh shit, and then I walked past and he just went, well done. And I was like, right. And then I understood the game, and actually fast forward a few years for the Hay Bellew fight, he just slagged me at the press conference and then phoned me up afterwards going, how good was that? And it's just, it's theatrical.
Well, I mean, as a promoter, you do want the drama to a degree, but I think it might have been in the build-up to the Bellew fight that David Hay it might have been during the gloves are off, he was pretty ruthless in terms of what he was saying. You've seen things like it's going to be more one-sided than gang rape. Make sure you kiss your kids goodbye.
That was in the Audley Harrison fight as well, actually. It's mad, when you look back on that now, and there was a little bit of controversy about those statements, but now if that was said, the fight would be cancelled, probably. and he would be cancelled, that's for sure.
I remember hearing that comment and I never watched another David Hay fight after that. I completely switched off to him. I thought there's a bit of banter and there's a bit of PR.
I actually, someone played that clip to me the other day and I was like, obviously now there's a lot more focus on what people say, and it's difficult. It's difficult for the older generation. It's difficult for my dad. He's the most honest, brutal, and he'll say exactly what's on his mind. And really, you can't anymore sometimes. In certain environments, you have to respect people's opinions, and that's the new world for him. And that's why I think he wouldn't be around now in boxing to do it. But yeah, certainly. But again, some fighters say things. Sometimes they'll come together at press conferences.
With you in the middle.
Yeah, but you have to understand, they're not normal people. You're the antagonist, really. You're putting them together face to face. He said that, they've been training for 12 weeks, they've been making weight, they're ready to fight. So you've got to be careful.
Is there a part of you when it all kicks off, like when Chisora flipped the table and when they went for each other during the gloves are off through the first one, is there a part of you thinking, yes, this is going to be TV gold?
Yeah, not at the time. But because it's, when he picked up that table and slung it, what I was thinking was, it was unbelievable because he stood up and I thought he was just going to flip the table. And he picked it up and just slung it. And it was a heavy table. And, and at the moment, and afterwards, people will sort of say to me, I bet you put that together. It's like, I approached him 30 seconds later. He wanted to kill me, and I was petrified. So I ain't playing games. I'm not, there was no joking around. But afterwards, obviously, when it's everywhere and it's front page of the paper and it's like,
ticket sales are going through.
Exactly. So, but you've got to be careful because, again, you can't really provoke these guys. Because something like that can happen. And if I've not been chinned yet, but it could happen.
I feel like the tide's turning because people like KJ represent the sport so well. And the way that before the Klitschko fight, they were so respectful towards one another. They were just... it was just very polite, but yet it didn't seem to take anything away from the build-up. It was such a huge fight, great atmosphere from start to finish. So to me, that just proved that you don't necessarily need to sling the mud to that degree.
Yeah, I think AJ was the first fighter ever where young kids actually said, I want to be like, and when you talk about Naz and Eubank, huge stars, but did the kids really turned to boxing because of those? Or, AJ was a hero. Obviously, he won gold in the Olympics, which is a massive leg up as well. But he represents and represented the sport so well that parents, grandparents, I want my kids to have the same values as Anthony Joshua. They've been around it, and it's the greatest thing. Just because you don't realise the power that people like that have in terms of how they can change someone's life. Katie Taylor, exactly the same, And whenever I get the opportunity and Katie's there or whatever, and I'll just bring my kids, just Katie, just talk to them, please, just for 1 minute. Yeah. And she'll just say, you're working hard, you're doing this, you do it. And those little moments, and actually I take that responsibility, not to that level, but because of what I've done and because of my profile more than anything, I can do that for kids as well. We spend a lot of time in local boxing clubs. And it's, when I talked earlier about my own biggest critic and I don't really feel like I've achieved that much, that still baffles me the most, where I can go up to a young fighter. I went to the gym the other night in Brentwood where my daughter goes. There's a girl in there, she's 12. And she's brilliant. I mean, if she doesn't go on to be a world champion, I'd be astonished. And she finished and she came up to me, she's like, oh, what did you think? I'm like, you're brilliant. She's like, am I? And it sort of left that night and she sent me a message on Instagram and she's in the national finals at the weekend. It's like, just a little conversation, a little bit of time. AJ and Katie Taylor, they can't give it to everyone, but that's an unbelievable blessing for people to be able to change someone's path in life, really from one conversation. So and as I get a bit older, I think that's what I'll probably end up doing more, is trying to help. Because that's when we talk about success. When I go down the amateur boxing club, specifically when my daughter's there as well, that makes me feel amazing. That makes me realise why I love the sport. you know? Not doing interviews where it's like, he said that about you and you're that and you're that. It's like, it's
Have
actually...
a little bit of that. Come on.
But going down there and actually seeing kids just exercising, just chasing their dream, just enjoying themselves, having a passion for something, you know? And I feel very strongly about the values that boxing clubs can teach kids and the problems we have now with gang crime, knife crime and kids with no direction.
Yeah.
And I feel like boxing, it doesn't mean... Just because you go for an amateur boxing club doesn't mean you have to be a world champion. Like I don't, my daughter doesn't spar, but she goes down there for an hour and when she comes out, she's exhausted. You know, she's now got loads of friends in there. They train twice a week. She's so much fitter now. She's so much more positive. You know, boxing's boxing, but you know, just, I think kids in general, making sure that they participate in sports.
Yeah. I've heard you talk about the first time that you became aware of AJ. Well, you were actually made aware of him a couple of months previously, but when you walked into to where he was training,
in Sheffield,
you could just hear that punch back.
I was with Carl Froch and Rob McCracken, who is his trainer, also head trainer for the GB squad. You know, just boom, 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 and his finger. I sort of turned around. Obviously, he's a specimen. You know, I was like, I said, Rob, who's that? He went, it's Anthony Joshua. He went, it's unbelievable. You know, sort of went like, hey, how are you? I'm Eddie Hearn. I'll be seeing you in a couple of years. And he was, you know, just a special one-off in many ways. Fighter, you know, the way he looked, the way he spoke to people, the time that he had for people, his story, but just a really good person.
His life could have went down such a different path.
Boxing does, you know. When you talk about examples of how boxing's changed people's lives, he's the one that you always use, but there's thousands like him. Thousands, not that went on to win world championships, but thousands of people that were going down the wrong direction. Like he basically, you know, he got arrested, he went to court, he was facing time in prison, he got off, and then he just thought to himself, I think actually he talks about he went to the gym because he wanted to prepare himself for prison so that he was, you know, strong enough in there to deal with it all. And he just went down there and it was like the regimental lifestyle. There's something that was missing in his life. And it's the special people. Like again, as you delve deeper into it, you realize that the special people are the volunteers, right? The coaches. They're there every night. They don't get paid. They're there every night giving up their time. 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. every night. And they don't turn around and go, I can't go tonight, don't fancy it. They're there every night. And those people, Johnny Oliver and Sean Murphy and people like that down Finchley, they're the people that changed his life. And luckily he was very good at it and went on. But even if he wasn't, it still would have changed his life. Those kids that are in those clubs are not getting into trouble. No. They're not getting into trouble. And that's the difference.
You've just been to Dallas, been to the fight camp. What's the mood like over there?
Good. He's trained really hard. I mean, the difference of the surroundings from the EIS in Sheffield and almost him sort of walking on water in there, pictures everywhere and, you know, 6 rings and sports labs and running tracks and strength and conditioning rooms and recovery rooms to just a gym twice the size of this room in Dallas. Just him and the trainer, Derek James, new trainer. And, you know, a lot of sacrifice. He's been away for 10, 12 weeks. And that's encouraging because the hardest thing we talked about earlier about fighters who come from a background or come from nothing. What happens when you get everything? Are you still that same fighter? You know, people like AJ, people like Canelo Alvarez that we represent. Canelo Alvarez used to sell ice pops on the street of Guadalajara. He's made hundreds and hundreds of millions. He's got 4 houses. So can you still get in there and fight with the same tenacity? And are you still willing to make the sacrifices? So I see it in AJ, a guy that is making the sacrifices, is working harder than ever. And I respect him for that. And it's a big fight coming up. You know, it's a must-win fight. And I feel like he's still got plenty in the tank. Critics, you know, people are very harsh. You know, he lost to Alexander Usyk, pound for pound #1. He's over. He's done. You know, finished. Was overrated anyway. You know, it's like, you could never really win. So this stage in his career, I feel like it's more about doing it for himself than kind of adulation or the fans, or, you know, he'll always be there for him. But he's done that his whole career. And I feel like when you saw his little implosion after the Usyk fight, that was like the pressure of saying, I've carried really this sport for years and I've tried to be the perfect role model and the guy, and now now I'm getting criticised and I can't take it anymore, because this is just a normal guy who now lives a life where he can't really go out. He's got media everywhere. He's got people taking photos, and he doesn't like to be rude. So when he comes out of training and there's 100 people standing outside the gates waiting for him, he'll talk to all of them and he'll take photos of all of them. It's unbelievably draining, you know, and that's a good thing, I think, about going to Dallas, just that freedom of people know who he is, but he can go to the mall, he can go for a coffee, he can go to the cinema, and he's just not getting bothered or looks over, he's taking a photo, he's taking a video, and it's not what he signed up for. No. You know?
But as a boxing promoter, you've got a very close personal relationship with AJ. When he was having his implosion after the last Usyk fight, what was going through your head?
I couldn't believe it, because he's a real brave-faced guy. You know, I've seen him lose before, and it kills him because he's a competitor and he loves to win. But that was different. That was a guy that was struggling, you know, and that was more like, I was sort of sitting there thinking, I mean, in the ring was frustration. I wanted to win so bad and I couldn't beat you, and I'm, you know. But in the press conference, when he broke down in tears, that was like, well, and I'm really glad that he did it, because it was like, I knew that he'd been struggling, and I knew that he was feeling the pressure, and I knew that probably wasn't enjoying it much anymore. And, you know, and sometimes you have to let your emotion out. You have to show your emotion. And people love that. You know, the ring stuff he apologised for, but people loved the rawness. Because when he lost to Andy Ruiz in New York, I went to his apartment the next day and he was like, yeah, you know, don't worry, that's boxing. You know, and I knew how much pain he was in for the defeat. But this was different. This was like, I can't take it anymore. You know, and you need those moments to overcome them. You need to break down, to rebuild sometimes. And I think that was good for him. I think, and people saw the real side of him. Like, he's been struggling, I think. And his whole life is boxing. Like, he doesn't really have a lot else in his life other than boxing. So when that breaks down, when you get beat, your whole world comes crumbling down. You know, it's not like, it doesn't matter, because, you know, and the sacrifices that you made means that he doesn't spend a lot of time with his family or his son or all that kind of stuff. So you feel very alone, because it's like everyone's there for you, but you're disconnected because, you know, you've been sort of so focused. And I just felt, I think he was lost. You know, he's like, wow, I've put everything into this and it's come like my world's over, rather than I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. Don't worry, because again, we go back to the conversation earlier, like it's just everything. It's like, what's next? How do I improve? How can just consumes your life. So he still has that tunnel vision, but I just feel like he's just decided now, do you know what? I'm going to do it my way. It's not, you know, a lot of the media aren't very happy because he said, I'm not doing it anymore. Sorry. I'll give you my time, press conferences, you know, in Zoom calls, but I'm just not doing days and days of media, sponsors, everything, because it's wearing me out and it's consuming me, you know. You
got a lot of stick as well from the fans after that fight. A lot of them were saying you should have intervened earlier.
I mean, if you do that when he's in that mood, I mean, he'll go, get on, and there'll be a big scene. So afterwards, it's easy to say that. I didn't know what he was going to say. He's never done anything like that before. But certainly he's on the mic and I'm a bit sort of shell-shocked thinking, but you imagine going up to him on camera going, AJ, go. I mean, he'd go, fuck off. Like, let me say my piece. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. Ultimately, people can't save you all the time. And that's all right. People saw the rawness. And for me, what that showed to me more than anything was how desperate he was to win. Do you know what I mean? Because it was just pure frustration that he couldn't win.
If the result goes your way on the 1st of April, and I sincerely hope it does, I've got to ask the question that you get asked all the time, I'm sure. Tyson Fury, AJ, will it ever happen? Has the window of opportunity gone?
Yeah,
Where are you at?
you can never predict what Tyson Fury's going to do. I mean, I'm not saying it's nice that people are starting to see maybe the two sides to Tyson Fury or the many sides to Tyson Fury. All I can tell you is that AJ wants that fight. He's always wanted that fight. You know, I put out a tweet yesterday just to say, look, if AJ beats Franklin, AJ v Fury, Usyk against Wilder, winners fight the winners. It's never that easy in boxing. But certainly the Fury fight, we would make that fight now for after. And it's a much bigger fight for Fury than the Usyk fight. So it would be a shame. I mean, they're both in their prime. And you never want to see a super fight like that when they're not in their prime, like Mayweather-Pacquiao. So it would be a real shame if that fight didn't happen. And right now, honestly, the only thing I'm concerned about is Franklin. Because if you lose that fight, you're in a really bad position. So fingers crossed.
Is this make or break for AJ?
Yeah, a lot of people talk about the rebuild. Again, you just lost a close fight to Usyk. Don't be too harsh on yourself. But if you lose at the level below, it's a long way back.
Does it frustrate you when Tyson Fury makes comments like he's willing to fight for free?
Yeah, because people believe it. I mean, like, people stop me in the street and say, I love Tyson Fury. You know, he gave all his money away to charity, to the homeless. I'm like, no, he didn't. What are you talking about? You know, and he says, I don't care about the cars. I don't care about this. I'm not interested. Look on the drive, there's a Rolls Royce, there's a Ferrari, you know, and like, I'll fight for free. Tickets must be free though. And no pay-per-view, just available to everyone. And people go, oh, what a guy. It's like, are you mad? Like, you know, so, but especially for the Usyk stuff, you're seeing that sort of opinion change. And I'm not looking to turn the screw on him, but people now see that, you know, we got a day to sign the contract. Like, he could just come out on social media and say, 5 o'clock today, sign the contract. I mean, these contracts are 40 pages long. Like, you've got to speak to broadcasters, sponsors, lawyers. And I feel with Tyson Fury, he puts something out there that he thinks you won't accept. And for us, it was the date of December 3rd, which AJ accepted. And for Usyk, it was the 70-30. And when the fighters accept, he'll find another reason for the fight to not take place. But he's a very good fighter. And what he's done to come back from where he was is incredible. But I just don't trust a lot of what he says, particularly on social media.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, you also represent Katie Taylor. She's got another big fight coming up. She is an absolute hero. What she's doing for women in boxing is just absolutely next level. But she always had those aspirations. She walked into your office day one with ambitions to sell out Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, we sat here. I mean, she sent me a message on Twitter just saying, look, you know, when she won gold in 2012 in London, it was one of the best atmospheres I've ever seen. And I thought about her turning pro there, but she wanted to go to Rio in 2016. And then when she finished there, she wrote to me, and there was no market for women's boxing. So I wasn't really, interested. I was a little bit curious, but it wasn't as if, you know, the paying public or the broadcasters were saying, we want women's boxing. And we, you know, but when I sat down with her in here, I've never been so motivated to help or to try something or to change something. Or, you know, when she started telling me stories about how boxing was banned for girls in Ireland when she was an amateur, and she used to walk through the doors of Bray with a head guard on to pretend she was a boy. And in the amateur tournament, she was Katie Taylor. She was fighting boys because girls were banned from boxing. Then from there, when they started opening it up, she wanted the IOC, the Olympics, to allow women to fight in the Olympics. They said no for years. And in the end, I think they'd had enough of her and just said, look, come and put on, we'll get a ring and put on an exhibition fight and find another fight. And she brought another girl who's like one of the top fighters. And they fought in front of the IOC. And the IOC just went, wow, you're in. So 2012 was the first year that female boxing was allowed in the Olympics. She won gold. When she won 5 world championships, 6 European championships, Olympic gold. And when we started with her, everyone laughed at me, you know, and everyone was like, what are you doing? Oh, it's awful. And I said, just watch. And on the first fight, she stopped this girl and everyone was like, wow, even my dad. You know, my dad's the same mentality as Frank Warren and Bob Arum. Girls just don't box. Don't box. Why? I said. I mean, it has helped me having daughters. But like, it's just like, why? I mean, actually, when you look at girls' football now, one of my daughters is a very good footballer. It's not really in their school, right? They do have a football team, and it's like, why? How can girls, how can it actually, I never thought I'd actually find myself saying this. Why is boys football and rugby and girls is hockey and netball? Do you know what I mean? Why now, with such a successful England women's team, should girls not get the opportunity to play football? You know, but 10 years ago, even I would never have said anything like that. But it's just, Katie's educated me, really. And also, the amazing thing is the quality. And you know now, you can watch a Katie Taylor fight. We're going to sell tickets. We're going to drive audiences. And that gives it longevity. It's not, there are too many people in the sports broadcast world particularly who use women's sport to tick boxes. Women's boxing is there on merit from an entertainment aspect. And that's what will give it longevity.
Absolutely love it. Does more need to be done to reduce the pay gap between men and women?
Yeah, I think we are really getting there. There's a difference. A women's world title fight should not necessarily carry the same purse as a men's world title fight. It should just be about the value of the fight, regardless of sex. That's why Katie Taylor earns more than men world champions now, because she sells more tickets, because she drives more viewers. Whereas when she started, we were miles out. You know, we actually talked about it with her the other day. She's very passionate about it. She would say to me, do you remember when you paid me that? I said, yeah, but you got to understand the demand wasn't there. Now it is. That's equality. When two people have the same commercial value and get paid the same amount of money, that is equality. And, you know, she's well on the way. She's making a lot of money.
She is. We need to get her on the On Your Mission podcast.
Yes.
Now, before we wrap up, I've got a quick fire round of questions for you. I've never actually done this before, but I thought it might be fun.
Okay.
There's a couple on here I'm desperate to know the answer to. So, okay. If you could fight with any boxer, past or present, who would it be?
Blimey. One that wasn't very good. So I wouldn't. Jake Paul, maybe something like that. I don't know.
Just on a side note, what do you make of Jake Paul running away from Floyd?
I think I've done some YouTube stuff. I'll never do it again. But Jake Paul isn't really YouTube. You know, I feel like he's actually a professional boxer now. He's not going to go on and achieve championships and stuff like that. But he's not terrible. He's better than some professional boxers. So, you know, and then the YouTube stuff, I think it does a job. You know, as long as we make sure people understand the difference between the two sports. But probably Jake Paul. Actually, because he's probably, he'll pay me very well and I might win.
What about Jake Paul running away from Floyd Mayweather?
Yeah, that was a bit embarrassing. But again, that goes back to the background and the type of people that you are. Like, no fighter would have done that. I probably would have. Do you know what I mean? And Jake did, but it shows you the background and the mentality of a fighter.
It does. So what would your music be for the ring walk?
I don't know. Probably some kind of like 90s hip hop that probably I listened to growing up. I don't know, like NWA or Nate Dogg or something like that. But yeah, I think that's him. I do sometimes, even now at 43, every now and again I hear a song on a running machine and think, actually, this is the one I walk out to. And then, unfortunately, it wouldn't go well in the ring. That's the only problem.
Ben Eubank, is it going to happen?
I think so, and I hope so. I mean, the problem is now, the first time it was made, it was about family, legacy, and now it's just pure hatred. So they're DMing each other every day, slagging each other off, and that's when it becomes really hard to make, because the money becomes less important. It's about control and ego, and he don't deserve this, and I don't deserve, you know. But I hopefully it will.
Do you think Conor's been treated fairly?
I think he's made mistakes. You know, I think, like, I've not, as I said the other day, I've not given him any advice because he's kind of on his own. I believe him, but I've not helped him with his media. I've not helped him with his legal case or his appeal. But he's wanted to do a lot of stuff raw because he feels like he's got nothing to hide. But it's very difficult for a young fighter to sit down with Piers Morgan and have a debate and come across perfectly, you know? Like, But in this world, you are guilty until proven innocent. And that's been difficult for him.
Who's been the most challenging boxer you've ever worked with?
Maybe Derek Chisora. He's got better as time's gone on, but he's always looking for an edge and always on a wind up. But he's a good guy.
Most embarrassing moment of your career?
Probably the Audley Harrison fight, really. I remember as well when AJ lost to Andy Ruiz, I thought we'd sold out Madison Square Garden, so I'm going to wear a tuxedo, right? Bow tie. And when he got beat, I thought to myself, I'm never wearing this again. It's the only time I've worn it. And there was one moment, it was a James DeGale fight. I got in the ring and I split my trousers.
Oh, no.
I don't actually think I've ever told that story before, but it's just sort of come back to me now. So I went through the ropes and I was a bit larger at the time. And I just went, like that. And I sort of gone like that. And like when you put your hand there to sort of see how big the split is. And I'm like, I sort of felt my hamstring. And it was right down the back. So I had to sort of shuffle around. And then when I had to get out of the ring, I was like, then went back to the change room and told everyone. And it was a source of good laughs.
What about the time that you jumped into the ring with Tony Bellew?
Frotch fight. That one when he just, mugged me off. It's like, Tony, we did it. He's like, he wanted to go and check on David Hay, who'd been slagging him off for 3 months, So, that was another.
What were you going to say about the Frotch one?
I jumped in the ring early. The ref went like that, but then he gave the guy a count. But I was already through the rope celebrating with Frotch, and the fight was still going on. So there's been plenty over the years.
What's been the highlight for you?
Maybe Katie Taylor against Serrano at Madison Square Garden. AJ Klitschko, very difficult to beat. AJ beating Ruiz in Saudi Arabia to win the titles back. Frotch Groves at Wembley, kind of first one that kicked everything off. But Katie Taylor maybe, I think, because that was like, AJ was Olympic champion, great fighter. Still what he achieved was incredible. But Katie Taylor, if you'd have talked at that meeting about what she's doing now, you'd have said, no way, impossible. Yeah. So, that might be the finest moment.
Absolutely love that. I remember as well, I watched both the Frotch Groves ones. I'm probably your typical avatar. I just like the big fights. I'm not a massive boxing fan. I love watching the big ones, but I just like all the sort of showmanship around it. I like the scandal, the controversy. And I was also a team Groves after the first one. But it was all the build up to the second one. Matches can be won or lost in the dressing room. I'm interested in psychology and high performance and people and success. And I knew categorically before they walked into the ring that Frotch had that. You could tell from the gloves are off. He'd been seeing a sports psychologist. Groves just looked unhinged. He didn't have the emotional intelligence.
No, he lost the plot a little bit, Groves, from where he was in the first fight to the second fight. But Frotch was a strange character from a mental perspective. Really didn't believe in himself, always doubted himself. I remember that afternoon before that fight, I would always go and see him. He just needed that reinforcement all the time. Literally he'd go, so this is 3:00 on the day of the fight. So what do you think about George Grove? What do you think about this fight? I'm like, I said, you're going to smash him, mate. The first fight you weren't motivated. You had a great camp. Mentally you're right. You're too strong for him. Yeah. I'm like, I can't believe I'm having this conversation, So, but that was just, everyone's different.
Yeah. Right, final question for you, Eddie. The name of this podcast's On a Mission. What's your mission?
My mission? I don't know. Probably at this stage in my life, happiness. Keep achieving, keep winning, because that does make me happy. And keep trying to take on new initiatives and projects. I like doing that. I like doing things that, we took like the Katie Taylor thing that just, you think that's not possible. It's a bit like when I wrote a book. Yeah. I thought, never write a book. I wrote a book,
Good book.
A lot of TV stuff that we're doing now, I might venture out into a few different avenues and I don't know, just have fun really. And I think try and create a bit of a legacy and try and inspire the next generation and leave behind something other than just the business, in terms of what you did. Because like I said, if I have any kind of ability to change someone's direction, I should really use that and help with that. And I think quite passionate that the country, I think, is in a terrible state at the moment. And I don't think anyone's saying if we don't do something now, we're going to have a major problem. So I just hope that they can sort of understand the roles that sports play and boxing in the communities. And if I can help be a voice for that, then I'll make sure I give my time.
Is there an end goal?
Not really. No, I think you never know when your last day is on this earth. So I think just the end goal, I suppose, is about being able to look back and go, I had a good life. I gave it everything. The one thing that in my mindset at the moment is time. And it's like, I'm 44 this year. So it's like, wow. And I was talking to someone about something that happened 20 odd years ago. And I thought that honestly seems like yesterday. And it just makes you think about almost like, quick, do it now. Do you know what I mean? Before it's too late. And I guess as you hit 50 and 60, that becomes a stronger feeling. So I just want to make sure that I can do enough, achieve enough, and get enough experiences to look back on and go, do you remember? Because I think memories are everything as well. Yeah. Not just in the shows, but could be, places you go, experiences you have, fun that you have, seeing your kids do certain things. They're the things that when you're hopefully 90 odd and you're sitting there, and it's your time, you go, they're the things you look back on. Not necessarily how much money you got in the bank, but it's not really about the money, it's about winning. But memories are nice too.
Brilliant. Eddie, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Red Light Finance. Red Light Finance is on a mission to bridge the gap between the real world and Web3 using blockchain technology. You too can power your business through Red Light Finance's gasless blockchain. I've personally been investing with Red Light Finance since day one, and I'm hugely passionate about the project. For more information on how you can get involved, visit www.redlight.finance. Thanks again to Red Light Finance for sponsoring the On a Mission podcast.